Morning, fellas. And Steve, thank you once again for bringing that hymn to us this morning. It was a good warm up to our text. Of course, we're in the Gospel of John, of which you're fully aware. We'll continue on. And I, I had the thought this morning that we have spent a long time in this interaction between Pilate and Jesus. And that is unique to John's gospel for sure. I pulled up my Bible this morning and it begins in chapter 18, I think verse 25 or something, and it continues through chapter 19, verse 15. And John took his time to pen that for a reason. And of course, what we're trying to do in the 21st century is to look back on that authorship and his intent as we attempt to understand what is about to occur in the cross event. So we're in the midst of that. We're moving towards the end. I'm actually now working on verses 15 and 16 um, when Pilate delivers Jesus over for crucifixion, but we're not there yet. We're in chapter 19, verses 7 and 8. And so we're going to talk about this. But at this moment in the dialogue, pressure is becoming unbearable for Pilate. And that's what we're going to be looking at. Again, in contrast to the person of Jesus who's standing in the background, um, kind of watching this whole thing. So the text reads, the Jews answered him, that would be Pilate. Um, what's the context of that is Pilate knows Jesus is innocent. There are several not only direct references to that idea, but he's trying to use his tools of manipulation, what he knows. He's in conflict and he's trying to get the crowd to buy into the fact to let Jesus go because he's innocent. And it's just not working. And as I've used my little AI tool to create these images of Pilate's head becomes a pressure cooker. So the Jews answered him, and late in the conversation, the Jews saying, we have a law, and by that law, he, Jesus, ought to die. And the reason is because he made himself out to be the Son of God, a term, Son of God. We'll look at that. Therefore, when Pilate heard this statement, he was even more afraid. He was afraid, and now it's to the point of being unbearable. From the Jewish perspective, to claim divine sonship, Son of God, that technical term, that was blasphemy, according to John 5:18. The title not only was messianic in its sense, and that reaffirmed in Old Testament Psalm 2:7 as the coming one, but also within that divine equality. And the leaders, this was intolerable. And the reason was they were all looking for a Messiah, a deliverer, primarily, hey, Carl, to deliver the Jewish nation from the control of the Roman Empire. But they were looking for the Messiah, the deliverer, on their own terms. They had defined, and there were various things they were looking for, but Jesus didn't fit it. And they were actually speaking out against, false Messiah. He's claiming to be the Son of God. And so that was just a primer of the Jewish perspective. And then on the other hand, we have the Roman perspective. And Caesar was called Divi Filius, which is son of the divine or son of God, son of the, yeah, either one. And then to declare Jesus son of God, that was not a cool thing in regard to Rome. Uh, Caesar had been, and the Jewish leaders, I mean the Roman leaders who were trying to keep the peace, were very familiar with false messiahs and what it looked like. And so it's not like Pilate was a novice, but this whole claim was politically charged, and that's really going to become apparent here. Um, Rome recognized only Caesar as the divine, and so to make that claim it was intolerable uh, for the Roman government. So with these two together, now the slide morphs into yet a more intense image of this pressure cooker is now exploding. And that is where we are. The intensity and the emotion of this scene in 7 and 8 is, that's why I'm calling it unbearable. So let's trace Pilate's process through this, what is equivalent to chapters. I mean, there's many verses, a chapter. I would say John equivalently um, he sets aside a whole chapter for this interaction. So let's trace Pilate through that through those 18 and 19. Number one, early on, that's what Pilate looked like when I first presented him, dressed in a business suit. Of course, we know it's metaphor here, but he was one who was in leadership. The fingers are being pointed to him, and he's trying to reason the best he knows how with the tools he has. But there's an inner conflict inside at the very beginning, and this inner conflict, we call it from a psychological condition called cognitive dissonance, and that's where what I'm in conflict for two conflicting ideas, and I'm in the middle of all this, and I'm trying to figure out what to do. It's part of being human, a cognitive dissonance. And he knows Jesus is innocent by what John has penned numerous times, yet acts against that truth because of his own skin, as we'll see. Um, the moral split ignites anxiety. You know, when we as human beings go against something that we hold a true, and we're actually, our behavior contradicts that, something inside us goes wacko because we're built in the image of God, all of us. And this ignites anxiety and begins this internal boil going on inside of Pilate. The second thing we saw in this section is fear and loss of control. Now his head is becoming a pressure cooker. It's intensifying. As pressure mounts, Pilate's fear of losing position and status overrides his conscience. That's going to become conscience. That's going to become worse. Seeking relief, he first attempts to manipulate the crowd. Remember, he does that numerous ways, beats Jesus and then brings him out, tries to reason with the crowd, brings up Barabbas, the whole Barabbas narrative. And that fails. It fails miserably. And then when that fails, he tends to abdicate. You know, he wants to remove himself out of the place of responsibility and put it on the people. And that doesn't work either. So he's trying out his tools, and his tools are not working. Now, a note here, I am continually looking at Pilate as representative of the human tendency, what we do, what we tend to do, not all of us, but what but the tendency under pressure. So I identify with these things. I have done these things that he is um, under, fear and loss of control. I'm guilty. I don't look at Pilate as the bad guy that have no relationship with other than just um, condemning him. But I think Pilate is representing what we humans do. So that's how I'm casting this actually this whole interaction. So I'm going to continually make notes to that end. While under pressure, we humans tend to forget whose we are. My little phrase there. I have found in my own experience when I respond to pressure and try to figure it out without really identifying whose I am, a creation, a son of the living God, that I am here as a gift. Everything I have is a gift, and I'm here by grace. I tend to forget that, and because I'm under pressure. As I remember that, that is a step in the right direction. And he's lost that. Of course, he has no grid for that. And the more he chooses, as we see him in his sequence, the more he chooses, the deeper he gets. It just gets worse, and it's getting worse because of his choices. The third is collapse of integrity. I've categorized that one. That happens. It's there's a progression, but it doesn't necessarily have to be a progression. But I'm looking at, three is representative of progression. So as things get worse, the pressure cooker now turns to a self. He's feeling the pain, and he is trying to manipulate the pressure valve through his actions in order to just get relief. It's getting worse. He repeatedly attempts to control through his self-derived means. He's doing it. Collectively, it erodes moral authority. The whole idea of it is when I'm reacting against what I know to be true or what I feel is true, that creates a breakdown. Something inside us begins to die. And that's what's happening to Pilate. Each attempt releases a little steam. It kind of works, but it also tightens the lid of guilt and shame. He's putting himself under guilt and shame. He's responding in a way that if he was in a that he would not respond in if he was not under such tremendous pressure. He's entirely under the control of his own self condemnation. That's what this is about. And a side note, when Jesus talks elsewhere about setting free, if the Son of Man sets you free, I think it's in 18 to 36. This is the realm I think he's talking about. Fellas, this is how I've cast Jesus as Savior. I believe that the primary way to understand the cross and to understand Jesus as Jesus of Nazareth as Savior and through his death and resurrection, the Christ, I think he came to save us from ourselves, about what we're due to ourselves, to each other, and ultimately how we treat God. I think that's how I've cast it, to understand what Jesus's mission is all about. So this is a prefigure, a picture that's going to lead us down, which I think a cohesive direction towards the cross. And that's how I understand it. Not everyone understands it that way, but that's how I understand it. That's kind of my general way I interpret things. So I don't think we're done yet. Yeah, number 4 is the last one. Emotional breakdown. That's the last. Um, when he explodes, Pilate experiences notice self-created pressure-induced explosion. There's a lot of words there, but it basically he's blowing up. I mean, it is really tough. Thus, in verse 8, we read from the text, therefore, when Pilate heard this statement, he was even more afraid. He's shaking in his sandals. The man endowed, so now we kind of back off a little bit. The man endowed with distinct and privileged authority. He is in the place. He's not powerless. He's very powerful, but he can't act within his realm of power because of the very handcuffs he's putting on himself. That is the human condition. We are made for so much more, but because of our condition as a result of sin, we tend to bind ourselves, and that is, in a very broad sense, what's happening, or what's being depicted here. And now another note, and thus we have an image of what we humans tend towards and why we need a savior. And that's, of course, how I'm casting this whole thing. So I think this is a summary, and then we're going to look at a summary on Jesus and then go to table time. So the core idea of what we've talked about, these 4 points, I'm going to briefly read those. Under pressure, here's my point. Under pressure, humans instinctively protect what they have created instead of trusting what is true. And Jesus represents what is true. He is the truth. Inner conflict, number 1. This is a review. Pilate stands torn between what he knows to be right and what he feels he must do to preserve his position. His struggle exposes the deep tension between conscience and compromise. That tension is potential, and we can respond in the same manner. It lives within all of us. Number 2, fear and loss of control. As the pressure mounts, fear begins to rule. Fear takes over. The illusion of control slips away, revealing how fragile power becomes when it's threatened by truth. Collapse of integrity. In the face of fear, conviction crumbles. Pilate abandons what he once declared as right, choosing safety over truth, a pattern that echoes through the human condition. And then emotional breakdown. By the end, Pilate is no longer reasoning, but he's simply reacting. The turmoil within spills outward, showing how unresolved fear and guilt can unravel the soul. And that's what we're seeing happen on the screen. Now, I have a quote that goes along with this from Richard Rohr. And to summarize the 4 points, the opposite of faith is not doubt, but it's control. That has been so true in my life. When I have episodes like this on definitely a less intense caliber or rating, I tend to resort to control. If I can control it, then I can take care of it, and that's unfortunate. So, contrast to that, we look at Jesus, and we're going to do a similar slide now contrasting. Jesus is showing us he's in the background, silent, and that is for a purpose. He is present in this entire dialogue between Pilate and well, uh, Pilate and the crowd is what I'm thinking. Jesus is present, and Jesus embodies what undivided trust looks like. It's all about trust, presence without defense. Amazing. I'm just blown away by that. And love without fear. And so his counterpoints are integrated being. He's operating from a fully integrated being, no separation between what he knows and how he acts. His inner and his outer life are entirely one. He's grounded in love, the relationship with the Father. His security flows from the Father's love many times. It's just this is who Jesus is. Is not doesn't his security does not come from approval. It comes from his relationship that is inseparable with the Father. It's apparent in all the throughout the gospel. Non-retaliatory strength. He absorbs violence without perpetuating it, standing firm yet free. That's very clear. He's not out to get them. Transformative trust. Where Pilate collapses into fear, Jesus remains centered in relationship, trusting love through pain. In this regard, Jesus is an example to you and I of what it can be. He's demonstrated what it truly means to be human in a very profoundly chaotic and unfortunate situation. And so in this regard, these are stimulating ideas for you and I. Contrasting living in a self-created bondage. Jesus reveals that true freedom is not the absence of pressure, which is true in our lives, but the presence of trust. And then I have another quote by Viktor Frankl from his book, Man's Search for Meaning. Between the stimulus, which is happening, and the response, there's a space. And in that space lies our power to choose. That's what that whole book is about, by the way. The power to choose in diverse circumstances. So here's our table time, and we're going to let me just go in here. Today we looked at Pilate, his role in society, what happened, his meltdown, and what we can observe. There's our image of Pilate. In contrast to that, we have Jesus, who's in the background, silent, and we have our image of Jesus. The defining factors for each of the images on the left, we have inner conflict, we have fear and loss of control, we've got collapse of integrity, and we've got emotional breakdown, followed by the quote by Richard Rohr. On the right-hand side, in a similar way, we've got the counterpoints of integrated being, grounded in love, non-retaliatory strength, transformative trust, and then the quote by Viktor Frankl. Now, the question where I'd like us to discuss is we've laid out, again, a contrast and with subpoints within that. And I want to think that possibly one of these really stands out to each of us, one of these points that really captures our attention. And I'd like to give you the microphone so we can talk about these things. So if you can, if one of these ideas, either from Pilate or Jesus, really grabs you, I think we'd all like to hear what your thoughts are about that. So go ahead. The microphone is yours.
I couldn't help but think at several points uh, through your presentation, Mike, and then get to what Frankel, the quote from Frankel.
Yeah.
Uh, all of this reminds me in several contexts of what the old rancher said. When you find yourself in a hole, the first thing you got to do is quit digging.
That's really good.
And Frankel said it much more gracefully, between the
That is
stimulus and
really
the
good.
response, you have a space. What are you going to do? Are you going to
Yeah.
dig another 8 inches and be further in the hole? Or are you going to stop and say, hey, wait a minute, this
Yeah.
this is not working here?
Yeah.
The
Dave,
problem is, like you
that,
say, the more pressure cooker we have, the less apt we are to stop and say, well, wait a minute. I'm this is not working here. So
well, that is a marvelous statement and something I'm sure we can all um, identify with. I'd like to throw back to you and the group. That is a marvelous idea. Stop when you find yourself in a hole, stop digging. Wow, what is it that helps us to lay the shovel down? I mean, it seems so basic, but in my life, I just keep going. So what is it, fellas? What have you
it
found?
it might well be that, again, the more pressure we're under, the less able we become to trust in the truth that we know is really there, and let that truth work its will out. Instead of that, it's the age old adage, we guys, we got to come in and fix it right now. And I
Yeah,
can do this and da 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 da. And that's not trusting.
no, trusting is I have a story, but I've been talking. What about the rest of you guys? This is really relevant to where we live, fellas. What are your thoughts?
Seems like to me that we are, to some degree, we are sort of raised, brought up, taught, encouraged, to keep digging or, to fix things.
Yeah,
We were given story problems in school, and you had to come up with the solution. If it's mathematics or,
yeah,
you
that's
know,
true. Yeah,
you can do this. Apply yourself to it. And I know that's a broad brushstroke thing. I don't have scripture for that, but it seems like there's almost sort of a cultural thing here to say, yeah, I'm in charge here, so it's up to me to work on this,
yeah,
fix it, do whatever it takes.
right.
It's sort of the opposite of trust to some degree.
There is always the pushback, Steve. I've I've heard it numerous times. I've believed it. Well, we're not supposed to just sit on our hands. Okay, yes. My problem, Steve, in my choices I've made that are not that good in life were my problem wasn't sitting on my hands. My problem was let's get her fixed. I tend to, maybe there are some people that sit on their hands. I don't know, but most of the guys that I interact with, most people, it's the problem is stepping in and trying to fix it. And that's exactly what Pilate's doing. He's trying to fix it so it can all go away. And the more he tries to fix it, the worse it gets. There's just, yeah.
So
Other thought? Go ahead, Steve.
can we sort of back to the hymn, He leadeth me. Can we do I guess my question for myself is, do I trust him enough to lead me to know when to sort of sit on my hands, so to speak, and act in trust versus when he's calling me to do something? Um, it's a tough one to
yeah, that
read.
when we sing that hymn and we talk about he leadeth me, we all understand it's metaphorical. I mean, the hands and we get that. But what does it look like? Really in practicality, I'm being led by God. Oh, really? What does that mean? It's it's a good practice to talk about that. What does that mean? Well, I think it's real. Yes, it's a relationship. And for me, the first thing I have come to understand, not that it's perfect, the first question I ask is, what do I need to let go of? That I talked about that earlier with the hymn, God through Jordan leads me. That's where my mind went. That to me is a practical something I can do to for me to hear God. What do I need to let go of? It's like I need to create a space that is free of me so God can actually lead me. I don't know. Steve, is that making any sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. How about
Applying it is a different challenge than it making sense.
yeah?
Living it out, yeah. There
Well, like
that
the cowboy said, stop digging, put the shovel down. I mean, for years I did, no, I got to get myself out of this. No, stop. So the word stop is a good one. That's a good word. And this, quite frankly, just almost daily. I mean, but if I'm in relationship, this is part of it. Yes, Carl. Carl, go ahead.
Huh. The other saying the old farmer says is when you find yourself sitting on your hands, stand up.
Okay, that's the other side.
Yeah, if you're dealing with people that are listening, that could work if you suggest some remedies to the situation. These people that Pilate were listening to, or people Pilate were talking to, weren't listening. It was their way or no way.
Yeah. And I think probably you guys have other things you'd like to talk, and I want to make room for that. I want to tell a quick story from the last couple of weeks. I was with a younger person, in business, and that person was saying how was explaining to me just how difficult it is and how demanding business is. And we were out for a walk, and that person kind of threw up their hands and said, I just can't do it anymore. And of course, I was silent. I'm cautious on what I say, but I was just listening and engaged in the conversation. And the first thing in my mind was, well, that's really a good thing. That realization that I can't do it is actually, gee, maybe my digging isn't working. Maybe I need to put the shovel down. Um, Boy, that I find that coming to that realization is really valid, really powerful. I just can't do it. Right. I don't know. What do you guys other thought, either that or other thoughts, fellas?
Is this person you were with, Mike, is he a believer?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Then he can perhaps grasp the point that
yeah,
it's not about the I, it's
right.
about the.
Yeah, and there was some conversation to that end afterwards,
Yeah.
but the point was, I think that is a marvelous gift, and to come to that realization is that I can't do it. Bob, you're muted.
Who was it that said, die, sucker, die?
That was John Wimber.
Yeah. And I mean, we we don't know when to stop digging. Like Dave started the discussion out. It's
Yeah,
all the things that we've been admonished to do as we've studied scripture is get out of the way, let go, surrender. I think it just comes down to that. Trust, trust God.
It also takes me back to another of my usual mantras, and I think it's under the general quote unquote church umbrella, is we're so often brought up and not only encouraged, but we're charged to do.
yeah,
But along the way or at the beginning, we haven't ourselves taken the time and or we haven't been around people that have encouraged us to find out who we are, to be
yeah,
what God wants us to be before we get involved in all the do's.
yeah,
And do just gets frustrating and counterproductive if you're doing something that you're not supposed to be doing.
yeah.
And there are things that we're not supposed to do. Somebody else has been called to do those things.
Mhm. That becomes very apparent in the person of Jesus, where we talk about number 1 and 2 is integrated being, grounded in love. His entire doing is out of a being uncomprehensible, uncompromising relationship with the Father. And the older I get, the more meaningful that is for me personally. I I have moved in my own journey from, well, Jesus is a great example, and yes, he is a great example, but it's becoming more, to some degree, more real of what Jesus has demonstrated, the offering for all of us as humans. Um, Now it's not perfection by any means, but this whole idea of understanding who we are and who we've been made to be, and the presence of grace is just, it's really important to me. And I would think for you guys as well, as you're aging, you just see it's, we can't do it. This is all a gift. Thanks, Dave. Yeah. Other thoughts? Looks like Totsy's going to say something.
Yeah. Uh, I was thinking about my own journey. As you guys know, I'm a late believer, but the thing that was actually uh, that I felt that my life was destroyed was, when I was um, fired up in Maine, and that's when I felt that I had been on the left side, where I was kind of controlling my life and my what I was doing for a living, and what my purpose in life was, and whatever. So that actually, I went from being on the left side of this, where I lost control, and then what happened was I ended up actually getting control, or Jesus allowing me to be grounded in love, and having a faith and being born again. And it was mainly, one of the biggest things was they had asked me to do a testimony. And so, I didn't even know what that was. I asked my wife, what's a testimony, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah,
so anyway, what I ended up doing was, I had been in a class in which they had gone and discussed the whole concepts of love. Okay, so I was asked to give my testimony, and I ended up doing actually kind of a treatise on agape love, and I chose as the example was my um, three women who I deeply love, being my wife, my mom, and my grandmother, who was actually
yeah,
a Buddhist. Okay, so anyway, I ended up I started to end up the thing by actually I gave a poem that I had written in the airport of Honolulu when I was not a believer, but I had kind of taken my mom over to Maui to kind of revisit her church, and I wrote up that experience that I did that, and then as I read that poem, I just burst out, and actually I broke down
huh,
in tears, and that's when actually the concept of Jesus being grounded in love, that's when I more or less converted that, I established that. And there was other
yeah,
instances, mainly the pastor that was uh, kind of listening to me, and at the same time, he was kind of, you know, uh, preaching to me in an indirect way. So uh, I actually experienced that, I think, in my conversion, and that's when I think my that moment of when I broke down in tears in front of the congregation when I was reading that poem. Okay, kind of that was my moment of being born again. So
how old were you? Can you recall how old you were when that occurred?
I was 51.
And you were in Maui doing that? You
Well, yeah, when I was actually had gone over because my mom was kind of failing, and so one of the things I did was I took her on the plane from Honolulu to Maui,
oh yeah,
and we visited that
sure.
wonderful old church there,
Yeah, yeah.
in Maui. So
That's a
yeah,
great story, Tati.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for telling us that. That's very meaningful. Other thoughts, fellas? Anything that might capture you, either from the left side or the right side?
Yeah, I think of our higher education environment today, and I look at number 3 on the left side, and I just wonder whether it be, well, I think particularly, I guess, at the College of Business, because that's where I went. You're in the marketplace. Um, I wonder how much integrity is really taught and focused and put out there for admiration and for a model, or how quickly does it become, no, it's all about the dollar. I've got to turn the profit. Um, doesn't matter what I do to get it, but I've got to get that profit. And I don't know. I guess in some ways I'm glad that I'm the age I am, and am not gonna have to walk through what's coming down the pike later, because I'm concerned about what our quote unquote younger people are being
Yeah, me too.
taught, or not taught is perhaps the better way to put it. And integrity's just, too many people just don't value it anymore. I mean,
We've really seen that shift in our lifetime in the
yeah.
last 20, I don't know, 20, the time goes so fast, but we see it in the business realm, we see it in the political realm. It just is
Oh, really?
all around us. Um, there is a clap, this whole idea of integrity is an integrated oneness of which Jesus demonstrates on the right-hand side. But it's all about now um, the separation is, we've given it as a culture permission to be separated.
Yeah.
And it's really unfortunate, really unfortunate. Yeah. And somebody was going to say something.
I'm I've been thinking about that. It's on the right side, and the image of Jesus is grounded in love. And my thoughts have gone. Do any of you know Rich Dixon in town here
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
and his story? I don't
Yes.
know, but Rich was putting up Christmas lights one day and fell off the roof, and he became paraplegic, and he's
Yeah.
confined to a wheelchair. And he wrote a book called Relentless Grace, which
Yes.
is about the grace of Jesus. And you talk about grounded in love. Jesus's love and grace is relentless. He's
Yeah.
always going to pursue us
Yeah.
when we don't just quite get it, or when we still keep digging.
Yeah. 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 The imagery, we keep going back, circling back to the same idea, relentless grace, which is that I read his book 20 years ago, probably.
Yeah, probably.
I was just thinking about him the other day. But anyway, um, for me, fellas, where I've landed, I'm an image driven person. And when I'm confronted with a pressure situation where the things as integrity of, what is real, what is false, all of this, it's part of my, I would call it daily experience. If anyone is in relationship, it's part of our daily experience. That the thing that I continually have been going back to is the idea. I see a cluttered room in my head, a cluttered room, and um, that clutter is my constructs. And the first thing I think of is, okay, what do I need to let go of here?
Hmm.
And how can I create space for something new to occur? If part of my clutter is occupying the room, then there's no room for something new that could be a gift from God. And so that is the imagery that I've adopted. And I'm able to, in a live situation, think of that image often of a cluttered room. And I go, okay, what do I need to let go of in order, take it outside the room so it creates space for something new. And I find that, again, it's not perfection, but I have found that slowing it down, it just makes so much difference, creates way less pain in me and then in my relationships. So if that's helpful, I hope it is. It's me and how I view it, and I'm sure you have your images as well to help you think through it. Steve said earlier, the application is the challenge, and that is so true. That's so true. So, fellas, we're gonna next week. Let's see. Next week, fellas, I'm gonna be gone. I'm gonna be gone on Wednesday, and that'll be the 5th of November. Next week, I'm going to go fly fishing. Not too much of a surprise there. But I'm going with one of my oldest two friends. He goes back to 7th grade, and we reconnected as adults. He lives in Las Vegas, and we've gone a few times. We've been together a few times, but he's going to drive up from Las Vegas, and we're going to meet in Carbondale, which is down by Glenwood, and stay in a cabin for 3 nights. And he wants to sharpen his fly fishing skills and spend 3 days with a friend that I knew in 7th grade. So I'm kind of looking forward to that. That's next week.
Mark it down, guys. Mike's going to fly fish.
What's that?
Mark it down. Mike's going to go fly fishing.
I knew it would go over like a lead balloon, but yes, I am, and take advantage of it at this age. So, but we'll get back together on the 12th, and then from there on out, we've got a pretty clear calendar. So, guys, thank you for your contributions today, and really for your thoughtfulness today. Some really good things were brought about. Tatsi, your story was meaningful to all of us, and thank you.
Yes.
And you guys have a good remainder of your week, and we'll see you on the 12th of November. So bye for now.
Thank you, Mike.
See you, Mike.
Yeah. Bye for now. See ya.
Hey, Steve.